727, good morning. Welcome to The Link, Thursday, June 10th. The Minority Leader, Senator Chris Duenas, joins us now on the show. We'll bring him on for some updates. Speaker 3, Sterlahi off island, her Wednesday slot. We did offer it to Vice Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, but unfortunately she wasn't able to make it in. So, Senator Duenas, good morning. We'll just start with the budget. I know that this week it was kind of like law enforcement, right? We had GPD, DOC, Guam Fire Department. But a recurring theme that we're seeing in these budget hearings is that you're getting agency heads coming in, submitting a budget plan to the legislature, and then come to find out they're getting X amount of millions of dollars from Governor Lieu on the side. Right, and so I'd caught, like, because it was on, there was a little interaction you had with the fire chief, Chief Dan Stone, right?
Yeah, good morning, Chris and Bree and Jason. Yeah, so
good morning.
Actually, with the fire chief, he pretty much didn't give us any indication of what the actual request was, but he said there was a request and he wanted to let the governor and the fiscal team announced that in July. That seems to have become the new, statement from all the agencies. Yeah. What's interesting, particularly in public safety, is most of the agencies have been requesting basically a status quo budget. And I think DOC probably of the public safety agencies is the most noteworthy in the fact that they're having a real difficult time keeping personnel, lots of resignations, lots of people leaving, and their ability to just bring people on board is really, I actually asked the director to go and sit down with the governor and put more emphasis on this, because it really is a possibility, if it continues like this, to become a state of emergency the way that they were expressing their manpower issues. Their overtime is really extreme. I think they're probably going to reach close to 3 million they're tracking for this year. And that's just simply because, guys are pulling 12, 14, 16-hour shifts. And basically they mentioned that sometimes downrange, you basically have one officer for hundreds of inmates. And so that was probably the most, alarming to me of the agencies. They talked about the fact that, some of it's, incentive pay. That's being worked on. From what I understand, the governor has agreed to the 25% incentive pay, but I guess it's also just, it looks like there's probably some morale issues and some other issues. So I think so far, pretty much most agencies have been solid on their requests, but DOC stood out to me as one we got to really pay attention to.
What do you make of that, though, when you get these agency heads in? I mean, it just kind of doesn't seem like it's in good faith where you ask a question of an agency head and you say, hey, how much money did you request from the governor? How much money the governor is going to give you? And you get this response where like, oh, we can't tell you because Adeloup's going to get mad.
Yeah, I kind of said to the budget chair on and off the record, I really think we need to press the front office harder on this, even if it's draft form. Yeah. It really is, at this point, to me, Chris, really hampering the budget process. I mean, if most agencies come in and they're telling us that on their general fund request, with the exception of a few health agencies that really surprised us, for the most part, they're coming in and saying that, they're just requesting whatever ceilings BBMR, requested for them, there's got to be something more behind that, because we know that many of these agencies, particularly when it comes to capital outlay, have major needs. I know that GPD needs vehicles. I know that, GFD has some, major capital outlay issues as well. And when we look back to the American Rescue Plan, I mean, these are some of the things that would kind of make sense, because when you look at COVID and what it did and what it's probably going to do to our budget going forward, there's going to be very little, resources when it comes to being able to buy some of these high ticket items that really just most of the time aren't in many of the budgets that are submitted. Most of the time we're sitting around waiting for federal funding and other opportunities to buy, equipment and do some of these major things that we're supposed to do. So yeah, it's kind of, it's really continuing to be very frustrating, because I don't think this budget is going to look like this when we get into August. And I've asked the chairman too, let's not wait until the middle of August to drop, the budget on the table and try to get through it in 2 weeks. I think we should just go in the first week of August and stay in the whole month, because we're really going to have a lot to hammer out. I think most budget levels are not going to be what they look like right now in terms of the requests.
Senator, you keep mentioning that, you're pushing the Oversight Chair, the Senator Joe San Augustine. What has been his response? I mean, if you guys were unified with all 15 senators sending over your spending plan to Adelup, you would think that you would all be unified in demanding Adelup to give you something.
Yeah,
even if it is in draft form.
Yeah, I can sense the chairman's frustration. I mean, he really, I can see most of the time, if you watch most of the time during the hearings, he's being straightforward on two major issues. One is sometimes we're getting this discussion about, issues of longstanding debts that haven't been paid. And he's reminding them, look, that was passed in the last budget, that if you have the resources, pay it. You don't need a budget authorization in FY22 to do that. Now, we don't know the reason as to why some of those bills aren't being paid when they say that their budget is up to date, but definitely on the ARP funding, he keeps asking the agencies, especially the ones that the legislature has already identified to get additional resources, are you aware that the legislature has requested this for you? And most of the time we're just getting a blank stare. So it's either they're not paying attention or they're just being told to not participate. And I can hear his growing frustration, and maybe it's time to sit down with him and pen a letter to the governor so we can put it on the record saying, look, we're trying to get through this budget process, but you're really not helping us along.
What about the sense from your colleagues?
Yeah, you hear the same amount of frustration. I think that, for the most part, we're trying to be conservative. I do got to appreciate when agencies come in and request, to stay within their ceiling and with a relatively status quo budget. Particularly when you look at some of these agencies, Bree, where they have, there's one of the things we're hearing a lot from agencies too is there's a lot of pending retirements. And when you look at an individual who retires, especially a 30+ year career, their salary is equivalent to probably 2.5 employees. So on one hand, you're losing institutional knowledge. On the other hand, you're really freeing up to get additional manpower because, there's such a large disparity in the starting pay and what an individual retires at. So, I gotta respect, that fact. And most of us know that, after PUA and FBUC is done, I don't know what 2023 is gonna look like. And so I do respect the fact that they're coming in with regard to that. But we also are, like I said, continue to be frustrated that that they're not, putting it on the line in terms of what this ARP funding is going to do for them. And it's just really tough for us to have a complete picture of what things are going to look like. The chairman did say this, from the beginning. He said, look, this ARP funding and the request that we've given to be able to help the agencies is mostly in capital outlay and things that they aren't going to be able to fund for because budgets are probably going to be lean going forward. This is designed to smooth out the budgets over at least the next 2 fiscal years. So I think that's where he's kind of continued to, tell the agencies, look, we need this information because this is where you're going to get the final budget that's requested, whether the governor signs it or vetoes it or whatever that process becomes, it's going to come out of this house. So, be straight up when you come down here.
All right.
I don't know how you guys aren't flipping the table down there at the session. I mean, you're getting played for fools. You really are. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I got these directors, that's one of the most frustrating spots to be in, because, you know, on one hand, you've got the front office that tells them, you know, just go down there and tell them what we've told you to tell them. And then, you know, yesterday, I will say this, I give it up to Tim Uggan yesterday. You know, veterans came in, and I really wasn't aware that they've had such a minuscule budget, you know, for many, many years now. And their budget, as proposed originally without what the amendments that they made, was really just for, you know, warm bodies that they had, and not even really the vacancies. And so he adjusted the level up by 300,000 from their regular budget. And then he gave us 2 worksheets on supplemental budget for equipment and capital outlay for things that they need, particularly at the veteran cemetery. So we are seeing sometimes, you know, that some of the agencies are coming down and saying, you know, well, I'm just going to put it out there, you know, what I need and what I'm requesting. And so, you know, we asked him to circle back to the front office and formalize it and make sure that it's just not a request that's put down to us, that you know, you really should send us a completely revised budget. That became kind of a theme yesterday too, because actually Parks and Rec came on board later and gave us a new folder revised as of June 2. And it looks like they're looking for more park rangers and some other adjustments to their budget. So, you know, there is a little bit of a shift with some of the agencies, but yeah, I think it's time, you know, and I'll talk to him again today. I think it's time for the chairman to kind of, you know, almost demand really that we see the draft, because, or just suspend, you know, the talks and say
hearings, yeah,
in August the whole way.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Tim was on the link when he said he was going to be shooting for the stars, and hopefully, what did he say, Chris?
Aim for the stars.
Just get the clouds.
Yeah.
Get the clouds.
Yeah, I know that, and that's another, you know, area where we basically said, you know, look, you know, we've identified funding for you in the ARP, and what we were trying to tell him, and he did agree, you know, they are being aggressive on you know, applying for federal grants, and we were like, well, here's a perfect time to make sure you get your ARP money, so that while you're applying for those grants, you know, when they come about, because most of those grants are multi-year grants, that will backfill your needs going forward after you've been able to really buy the equipment and things that you need at the cemetery. And also one of the biggest things is and we identified this, they do need IT upgrades. I mean, they basically say straight up, they're in the Stone Age, and they're communicating with documents back and forth to, you know, the health facilities in Hawaii, and, you know, trying to facilitate applications and working on behalf of veterans for critical things that these veterans need when they get to their destination. They requested 12 additional laptops, a server, some other things that really will kind of, and working with OTEC said, you get the equipment, we'll come in and bring you in, you know, into the 21st century. So, you know, that's something that I do appreciate the fact that they've stepped up and said, we need this. Now, you get a federal grant, you know, in another year or two, and that helps you maintain that effort going down the road. So, you know, this is where we really want to make sure that sometimes there's discussion on, should we give more public assistance with this money and the like? And I'm certain there's some kind of an area, you know, for that. All rise, but haven't gotten that yet. But the thing is that we've got to also really do these critical things, you know, breathe, that help the people. These are veterans, for heaven's sake, right? I mean, we should have up-to-date information whereby we can facilitate, you know, whatever they need, particularly if they're leaving off island, that all their documents are transmitted properly through the application process on a proper computer, as opposed to, you know, just trying to wing it. So, you know, this is where the legislature, I think, really has seen that there are critical needs that are direct services to our people, you know, especially our veterans. I mean, we should be ashamed of ourselves if we can't, you know, do that basic, you know, operation to help them.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Senator.
Yeah. Rant over.
It's like I feel like we're always talking about where's the spending plan, what's the latest update from the legislature, and there's just no update. So
Yeah,
I guess
and,
it's time for you guys to kick it up a notch.
Maybe.
I thought our resolution, I mean, while it wasn't, 30, 40, 50, 100 people, there was some substantive things there. I think one of the gentlemen that testified, we should really take a close look at this. He said, maybe put 100 million away and, or right now inject it into immediately getting tax refunds out. That's probably what the balance is. And now you're ahead of the game. And, you can really, I remember under the Cabo administration, we were trying to do that through a line of credit kind of setup, but that was an interesting idea and something we should actually look at. Like I said, I think right now that 300 million for the hospital is basically a savings account. I haven't seen the governor's office move to really be, to show us that they've really earmarked that for that potential. But I thought that was an interesting idea just from a private sector guy coming forward and saying, and especially one of the main reasons why this gentleman testified in that, with regard to that is because a lot of people who filed their income in 2020 and they're basing it on 2020 are actually going to be getting a return next year, as opposed to, they're not going to cut a new stimulus check, right? And so on some of these, it's actually going to be an enhanced tax return. So to get ahead of the game and get that money out in the community, that helps people as well. So I thought that was a really interesting idea.
All right.
Anything else, Senator?
We just keep plugging away. I think that I think one of the more interesting hearings that's going to come up, and I'm glad that the prime sponsors have called for this hearing. As a co-sponsor, I let them know that, hey, look, you got to get this issue, discussed. It's going to be a heavyweight issue for this legislature, and that's the medical malpractice legislation with regard to arbitration. And I know that there's been a lot of, vocal doctors lately coming out discussing, why this legislation is dangerous. And so I know on the 23rd, there will be a hearing, and in July, there will be 2 additional hearings, which I requested that the authors do in order to be able to have a proper discussion on this issue. So I think something, Chris, Bree, Jason, I think this is going to be other than ARP and other than, the budget of the government and other than fixing our economy and trying to get tourism back on track and all those things, I think this is going to be the bill that's going to be, this legislature is going to have to really grapple with. On one hand, you have these heart-wrenching stories of individuals who've either lost family members or individuals who might have been otherwise incapacitated or maimed, if you will, right, in a procedure, that there's a perception that, something, that there was negligence. On the other hand, you have a situation whereby our island needs, physicians with specialties that are willing to operate in an environment that's not litigious. And so this guys, I think, is going to be the premier test of how we try to balance that issue.
Yeah. I mean, as it stands now, Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you, like, let's say, knocking on wood, had a malpractice or a wrongful death, the process is I go before a 3-person panel, but I need $40,000 to do that, right?
Yeah, when I received the presentation from the prime sponsors, I was like, wow, there's been a lot of research that's been put into this. Yeah. But what I walked away with more than anything else is this idea of the magistrate's judge to be able to sort of referee and kind of make the process not so cost prohibitive. Like I said, this is a tough situation. But really what it comes down to is even in some of these cases where people are upset, right? And we even heard some doctors lately say, hey, are there bad apples? There's bad apples everywhere, right? Let's weed out the bad apples. But one of the things that was really, I was really struck by is, even attorneys who have, deep pockets in terms of their ability to do pro bono work, basically don't take any of these cases because it's so detailed and it's so arduous to go through the process. And so I don't know what the middle is yet, Chris and Bree, but this is going to be a tough one. And Chris, you're right. I mean, basically it comes down to whether it's the ability for some sort of substantial award, or whether it's just the fact that before you even get to discuss the issue,
Yeah.
you got to have a couple $100,000 down on the table.
It's crazy. It's
That
crazy.
seems like a
Yeah.
system that is really, really that's a difficult system to navigate.
I mean, let me oversimplify it for you. Guam, when compared to other jurisdictions, I don't believe that patients have the rights that they need to. I mean, it's just so obvious, right? But you're right, it's going to be hot because we've already got some doctors who are coming out saying, I'm not going to do these kind of patients anymore because I don't like this bill. So it's going to be contentious when you've already got these doctors who are like setting, the line, if you will. Senator, we got to go. But thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Keep an eye on that one, guys, as I know you will. And
Right on.
Hey, Bree, I'm not sure whether you're on vacation or what you're doing, but have fun out there.
All right, thanks.
Thank you,
Glad to
Senator.
see you every day.
All right.
Take care.
Stay safe.
Let's keep it in the K-Wave News Zoom room. We'll go over to Ms. Maria Pangolina of the Guam Election Commission.